sorry. You good, Mayor?
Yes.
Good. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to open up our regular scheduled meeting for July 9th. Please join for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. I know Bobby's here for some there. Would you like to say anything but in public? Or you want to do it in executive?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
You just say it.
All right. Any correspondence, Mayor?
No.
No. Okay, we're all good. All right. Again, the next thing on the agenda is consideration from the minutes, our regular June 11th. Mary gave a copy, but everybody had time to take a look at that. I think everybody was present at that meeting. No? Okay.
So I was, so I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of June 11th, 2024 as presented.
Excellent. Do we have a second? I'll second. Bobby seconds it. I'll try everybody's mind. Everybody all in favor? Saying aye. Aye. We have one abstention. Okay, great. All right. And Dee, you were there, right? Were you all in favor? Dee was.
Sure, I was there. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. Okay.
We were on the Google Meet.
All right. Here's the first ask for tonight. Again, it's a utility body for a mechanic's truck, and I know Bob Dibble would love to speak about this.
Yeah.
So we're gonna replace the utility body that's on our 2014 Ford chassis. But the utility body was originally on a 1998 Chevy chassis. We took it off of that, put it on the newer Ford when we purchased that. So it's 24 years old or so, and it's in really poor shape. The passenger side of the utility body is like hanging off of it. It's all right out. So we're gonna replace it with an aluminum utility body. I got
We all have a quote here, I think.
yeah, you don't have the quote on it. I don't know if they have any questions on the quote itself. I'm sure you read through it.
Well, I know aluminum is obviously much more expensive. Obviously, this is going to go down at least a couple more truck chassis.
Yeah, I mean, it should with no problem. You know, I mean, with the steel one, we got 2 chassis out of it, so you know, it's definitely long-term purchase. You know, we shouldn't have any issues with it. You know, the pricing is good on it. You know, I looked at when we did the 2021 F-250 for building maintenance, that was just a hair under 17,000 for that body. And there are 4 or 5 different options that we have on this line of that body. So, it seems like, you know, it's pretty good pricing. You know, we did have a few things we added to it. You know, the spray liner Linux, which is a plastic spray liner that goes inside, so the body doesn't pick up on the sides.
We've seen some moving.
And yeah, so you know, we got more than our life out of the body that's on the truck now. And the chassis, and it's done its thing, and it's time to replace it. So
You painted white, is it?
painted white, yeah.
Do you know, the quote's almost 2 months old. Do you know if that price is still good?
Yeah, but the board of selectmen copped me $18 just in case.
They're generous more than
I
others.
would have went right to $20.
Yeah, round it up, round it up.
It's actually 1720.
We'll round it down.
I think we're okay.
It's right here in Danbury, so.
Yeah, yeah, and that's good service. So.
All right, someone like to make a motion on that?
Well, I have a question for,
Oh, sorry.
so, and I'm sorry, I don't have the list of wants that get pulled out of the CNR account. Was this on a current list, Brad? I know things pop up and it's not a million, but I just want to make sure it's somewhere on a list so we could be consistent. If we run out of money, we can say no because something was on a list or not on a list moving forward.
Do you have any of those ratchet straps? Those 2-inch are real strong. Maybe you can keep the boxes together.
There you go, bungee.
If we got that. Well, into the car was
Angle iron.
Replacement service body for fleet truck. Capital plan 24-25, 19,500.
Well, and the system's working. I think it's great. I would love to make a motion if there's no other questions.
I'll second it.
Right, is that your motion to approve it, John?
That's fine.
And we have a second? Yep.
To come out of the CNR.
Yep. Out of CNR, okay. Any other questions? Anybody will? No good. All right, try everybody's mind. Everybody in favor? Do you go with that? Signal
Aye.
saying aye?
Aye.
Okay, let the record show unanimous. Next thing is, consideration of decorative light poles. And I think Eric is here just to kind of go over the game plan here, right? Eric?
Sure, yeah, so, starting with this is there in PT Barnum Square, you may have noticed there's a pole that's down right in front of the Greek, right, where the driveway for the water already.
Close to the Christmas break. Yep.
Yes, so those are all, I think there's seven of them, anyway, it doesn't matter. Those poles all in PT Barnum in that triangle are all 8-foot poles. The rest of the poles on the street are 13-foot poles. They don't make the 8-foot poles anymore. So what we're gonna do is this, we're gonna take, 2 of the 8-foot poles that are on the street side of the PT Barnum triangle. Use one to replace the one that's broken and keep one as a spare in case anything happens. And then we're buying these 2 new 10-foot poles, which are close enough to be on the street side of the square or the triangle, whatever you call it. And that way we'll end up with a spare one, down the road, because they don't make that one anymore. So that's the plan. The 3 are 16,772.
And just real quick, how many more 8-footers are there? If the rest of the Agreement Avenue is 13, we're keeping a spare for what? For 2
Yeah.
more?
No, there's 6 of them.
There's 6 short ones.
Make it last, yeah, as long as we can.
I didn't know how many were there, but you're saying there's 6 short ones. So if anybody drives over, we should drive over the short one.
Right.
Right.
All right, does anybody have any more questions for Eric?
Was there an insurance claim on this, or just we don't know?
We never found who.
We asked that in the selectmen's meeting and
Some,
before everybody's time. You don't remember, do you?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Is this an aluminum pole with a casting on the bottom of
It's
it?
decorative, yeah, decorative poles with
steel poles,
So steel.
dome on it.
So the bases are set.
crazy money.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
my summer jobs in college. I was
Cast
a
aluminum,
welder,
right?
a welder at an architectural lighting firm, and poles $300.
Spin that right out, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
But that was 1932.
Yeah, right. But
Yeah, but you're welding. He can burn some wire. It doesn't look pretty, but he burned it. Yeah, I'm thinking they weren't big welding.
they get out in the shop and that's a plus.
With your welding experience, Bob, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept as presented placing of the decorative street lamp poles in the amount of $16,772.
And Dee, you'd like to second that?
You want to second?
I can second it. I do have a quick question, but I can second it, yes.
So if you second it for discussion, you're gonna vote against it, but what do you got, Dee?
I'm not going to vote against it. I'm just kind of curious, why are we introducing a third height pole? Like, why aren't we buying 13-foot poles for replacement instead of 10?
Because these were the closest to the ones that are in the square itself. The ones in the square are all shorter. So what will probably happen is, as those wear out, is we'll keep getting these 10-foot ones.
I apologize, but it's a little bit garbled, but what I heard is that the 10-foot is closest to the 8-foot, which is where we're replacing those poles.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. Thank you.
Dee, there's 6 of them in PT Barnum that kind of go around, but then there's 13-foot going down Greenwood Avenue. The
Yeah.
short one got damaged, so they're trying to do their best to keep those 6 short ones to look the same.
I see.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Question, actually. So do you have to know how it happened to file a claim? You don't need that.
Like we need to do is the
License plate number.
Will call, police will call the vendor, there's an accident report filled out in the file plate.
Okay.
And if that doesn't happen, somebody hits something and
Oh, you mean
But
go
it-
after
but
our
it-
own insurance, you mean? Is
Oh,
that
I
what you're
mean,
saying?
I'm just
But-
saying that.
So our deductible
What
it used to be 10,000 when this happened, now it's 25. So, and it would have been just the one pole that
Okay.
they would cover,
Just,
so
you know,
we wouldn't
thinking of,
cover
you
anything.
know, in my tiny world.
Yes, John.
So I just have a comment. So last winter, we, Eric, with you, and we all went and did a tour of the buildings in Bethel. And the importance of that is I clearly remember talking about that, and I can just visualize exactly what we were doing. As a matter of fact, when you said, geez, is that a non-recurring expense or is that a maintenance side? And it doesn't happen every day. So I think the process is great that we take a parade around town and just be able to visually look at things. It gives me a better understanding of what we're asking for.
Anybody else? Sure, everybody's fine? Signal by saying aye.
I,
Hi.
Good show, good. Thank you. Okay, this one here and some questions. This, Eric, is consideration of town hall energy management control system. And this is for the heating and cooling or just heating? I'm sorry. Can we just go over that? Just for the baseboard, right? Yeah, winter stuff.
We have multiple systems in this building, so. Like I said, this is still hot water, so I know there's been a lot of questions about this, so please ask again, like, don't cover anything. But essentially, this boils down, this kind of started before my time. It's really the last step is that energy savings. So, basically, the, yeah, okay, so if there's two quotes and then we put a 5% contingency, so that's where we get the 20,000 from. It was 19,550 from SME Building Systems that just see attached in their materials. That's programming and controls, and then there's about 2,000 for installing pressure control sensors and piping, and then we put a 5% contingency. Not that we expect anything to happen, but just to make sure that are covered. So essentially, this really does two things. It finishes up the energy management system, so it allows the software to basically smooth out. How do I explain this? So
Spikes.
again, I'm not.
Yep.
HVAC is not my expertise, but my understanding is that it's not so much about the thermostat, it's more about smoothing out the actual operation of the drive. So let's say, somebody comes in the morning, it's cold, we turn up the thermostat, so it goes up like that, right? But rather than all the pumps coming on at once, and the energy management kind of smooths that out, so it's not.
Takes the peaks out. Yep.
pumps And burning more energy than it needs to. That's my basic understanding. And then the other part that's key is it allows Brett Brooks, who's our building supervisor, to see all this in his controls. So it saves him any kind of manual adjustments that he makes because the controls are kind of automating that, doing that, but also the controls it's basically like kind of like a website that you can log into and from his laptop and see. He's going to scroll the buildings, see what's on, what pumps are on, what heaters, what pumps are. Warnings pop up, red flags, so he can see all that just from his laptop. See everything.
Can you tell the group about the $10,000 savings that we're going to take out of the utility account?
So
Yeah, you remember the 10,000.
So I think you're referring to 13.
The conversation we had yesterday.
Yes.
Well, I didn't pick any, but the projection for the power savings was $13,000, or $15,900, almost $14,000 annually in power.
By spending 23.
Yeah.
And again, I lowball it maybe 8 to 10, but again, what Eric's saying, it takes the spikes out of the pump. Instead of going to pump 100%, it may go 60%, and there's a utility savings in that. You know,
Yeah, yeah, all right. I drive this well, very dry.
Yeah.
So Greg can adjust. Greg can look at it and see if anything needs to be adjusted on the drive. So when we'll call for 40% heat drive, we can run at 40% instead of 100% drive. So that's really what you're pushing for.
Instead of somebody,
Eric, I would have started with the same thing.
yeah.
That's the adjustment.
Right. He wanted to get in the technical part. But I knew that was a good closing point. I mean, he did a thing right up.
I have a question. Aaron, you mentioned that this is the last part Amoresco project.
Yeah,
We've been hearing about that project for a long time, so but this is like the last piece. We don't hear about anything else.
Yeah,
It's
is it
connected
really?
to Amoresco.
that's my understanding. So we had to install the variable frequency drives. So this is now the final piece.
The control part of it.
So the control piece, there's pieces of this, especially this building that were never done as part of that, right? Like there's, the north wing has all kinds of heating. and cooling.
Right.
It's not a lot.
Might be.
Seems like we've been hearing about it for a long time. It's supposed to save us a lot of money. And keep
Yeah,
saving more money.
Keep
that's,
putting more money in to save more money. But, just as Brad's doing it, I mean, Brian had asked a question in the board of selectmen, and, you know, if we weren't gonna save much, but I mean, that's a big savings, even if it's $6,000 a year, it's gonna pay for itself, you know what I mean? Besides the ability to make changes and catch error codes or something like that coming up, you know, in the system, so.
Did you have any input on the stuff that's void that they're going to how accurate the guesstimations?
That's a good question. I know you were asking.
Yeah. We only can go with what they're saying.
And we have to run the solar farm if we need to.
Right.
no, don't need to get it started. We should talk about this when I'm not in the room.
Yeah, you can only go on what you're, you know, feeling. It makes sense. You know, is it $10,000? I don't know. You know what I mean? Obviously.
Well, just looking at half the implemented, have you seen a reduction in where energy?
In other buildings, I imagine. It is your
Yeah,
question.
you do have reports that did tests. How many years has it been?
So-
6 years? 'Cause they-
The first payment to Bank of America, who we did the financing on the $4 million was December of 2016. So 7.5 years ago now. So I assume it was about, without digging through a ton of emails and paperwork, that was my down and dirty way to get you an answer quick. So that's when the first money started going out, and we wouldn't have paid anything until the whole 4.5 was probably spent or close to spent. So it was, most of the work was probably done in 16.
So do we have to start replacing it next year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to go.
What of those projects that were done with the Green Bank?
I don't know if it was done through the Green Bank, but it was, I don't think it was, because there was no like grant money with it. It was just, I think it was a 2%
came in.
loan.
It
Yeah.
was a deal.
Someone came in, sold you a bill of goods, and you took it, right? Was that the lights and the toilets and everything? Bob?
Lights, toilets, it was AC and the
And
GE.
the whole thing about the LED and the lights and everything. And
Right.
there's a big.
Now these are outdated, right? Here,
Yeah.
right? They're probably still paying.
But not everything in it, I think, was savings. I think some of the savings paid for putting, there didn't used to be AC in the GP. So they did that.
Yeah,
as
so it's
part
hard
of
to do
it.
that equation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't get a real dollar.
Yeah. But like the LEDs, everything had its own, like legs, not lifespan, but like if the LEDs cost 100,000 to do across the town, the payback on them was really quick. So in theory, we've made money on these, but other things, like, I know.
Oh,
made money.
big money.
Yeah. If you buy more, you save more on those.
I think
ways.
it's free. So go.
Like Prime, you don't spend more money when you get Prime. It's free freight.
It's free delivery, and then UPS for that. So, yeah, so 2016 is when we made the first payment on it, so 2016. Probably.
All right, would someone like to make a motion for Eric, because he is sweating this one out?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'd like to make a motion to fund 23,000 towards the hall energy management controls in the amount, I'm sorry, in the amount of 23,000 and take it out of the CNR account.
And cut a utility line by 10 pounds?
Yeah.
Oh, you can.
We'll see that in February. We'll see that year.
That's it.
But Brad, please make a note.
That's a
We're gonna
separate
get this.
motion.
Would you like to second
I'll
that?
second.
Okay, great. All right, any other discussion on the energy saving management control system? All in favor of saying aye? The record shows unanimous. All right, this here, and Eric, I know there was a mistake in the John Deere, that laptop thing or whatever. So, but again, there's a ask for some fuel pump system down there at the town garage or for all the town vehicles. But please,
Yeah, so, The fuel system is, basically what, all of our vehicles use to get gas and diesel. It's got a pilot, you're probably aware of that. Let's use it. So the software, basically this is a hardware and software upgrade. The hardware system is no longer supported, so it's getting harder to find parts. And the software is very outdated. I think it's actually like DOS space, right? See that? So, but you don't see much anymore. So it's all bring everything up to speed. You don't have to worry if there's a part issue, and with the software, that you can like it, set up people's key accounts from the desk rather than having to go over to the so.
Explain, do they have a fob, a key, how does it work?
So it's like, it almost looks like a cart, and it's like the ignition key without the metal part on it. And what you do is, out at the gas pump, you just lift the door and you plug that in, and you put your vehicle number in, and then the pump you want to use.
And this would be more updated, like a
Yeah.
EFI pass or something?
I think we'll use the same key. That seems pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Or we're gonna update the head that's out at the
Oh,
pump.
okay.
And then the stuff that's in the office, we can encode the keys. And the office.
Who's got key 11 or
Put
something?
key in there, you program it in, then pull it out, and it's to that person.
And then it gets charged to that vehicle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It'd be a, you know,
So in March of 23, Board of Finance approved 11,500 for gas pump and software. So
So-
that was, there was confusion over that.
yeah,
In the minutes, right?
And we've never spent that 11,500.
that was really supposed to be the John Deere software.
Okay.
And we spent, it was only $7,700. Right?
yeah, 7,700.
And that was spent out of your operating budget and not out of the capital because we didn't know it was, right? Or did we ever, when did we do
That
that?
was approved, I believe.
Yeah, no, we're gonna use that money,
All right,
but we just won't use the whole,
okay.
But I thought we did something with the fuel pump in 23, but it really wasn't because the minutes were messed up. It was the John Deere.
Well, it says gas pump and software. So the gas pump was supposed to be the handle piece, right, or something?
So we repaired the actual pump heads.
Exactly.
The nozzle on.
Right.
Right. And they seem to be fine. We found an issue with them, and it's been repaired, and it seemed to be fine.
For how much? A couple of grand?
No, it was like $50 or something. We set up a little bump stuff. And
So you asked for 10 or 11 and it cost you 50.
Yeah,
Okay, well, just for the record.
because
Yeah.
that's what.
You need to get that back?
Yeah, yes. Police department. Something.
Oh,
Hang on one second.
I gotta be here on Sunday.
I got a warrant one.
But Eric, how did that? How did the John Deere thing come in play? That everybody remember we bought something for they could program the John Deere to say, hey, there's a problem with a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And that was like $10,000.
my theory,
Yeah.
this is my detective work. I went back and read the minutes. And what happened, was, remember, because I was there, we were talking about John Deere software, and then Brian Kersey asked a question about the fuel pumps, and I remember we were talking about kind of. what
And you
was.
think that's where Mary screwed up at that point?
It just never
On
happened.
one side. I think that's what happened. I think it was, it just said fuel pumps and software.
All right, thanks, Eric.
And then that's my, so I went back in the minutes and that's where I found it.
So Brett, where's the money?
So the 11,500 was approved out of capital non-recurring. Hasn't been spent yet. You're saying that software is less than 8. So when that is done,
But he paid for it already.
he didn't pay for it yet.
Yes, he did.
Or did?
Well, I don't know if
You
it's
got
turned
it.
to the capital yet. I don't.
When did you get it?
Couple weeks ago.
Oh,
Okay, all right.
But
So the other thing is the 1.5 was the original estimate.
and it's 7, so we picked up $3,500. Right?
yeah, so it's not just John Deere software that works on all our diesel vehicles, including John Deere stuff.
Okay.
It might get confusing because it's called J Pro,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it's a service computer, it's a laptop. Right?
Did you buy something a year or two ago specifically for John Deere engines? And you talked about plugging in so we can know an error code instead of running it. Was there another piece of?
That's what we wanted to do, but this J Pro thing.
Oh, so you never bought that?
No, so we can cover it through this J Pro thing.
So you're waiting for an invoice for the 7th, so you'll pay that and
And then there'll be 4,500 left.
you'll
in
fix that.
And then it'll just, or 3,500. And then that money, once that is done and that's paid, the rest will just go back to unallocated.
Exactly. Back into poverty.
Yeah.
So we're able to purchase that through NAPA, which is we use, or we get our source code discount.
Yep.
So the actual cost, I think, is at 11.5, but.
The discount they give you the town.
It's,
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
All right, now I'm not confused anymore, I guess, but I knew there was 2 pieces, but you never did it because you were waiting to do this. And that was only a year ago. Wow. Okay. All right. Bob, since you understand, would you like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve. I'm sorry, are we talking about food?
So that was directed towards Mary. You got it?
Thinking I'm married. She's the only one of us who's right. Yes, I'd like to make a motion to accept as presented the fuel pump system hardware and software upgrade, excuse me, in an amount of $14,111 to be paid from capital money.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
And just a little discussion, would that fill up a John Deere piece of equipment, that fuel pump?
We're not sure.
All right.
Is there any difference if we're accepting or approving?
We're approving and it's coming out of CNR. What's that your?
Right.
Like that was, I heard him say accept.
Accept as presented.
Oh,
Except as.
Accept this percent.
I'll change it to it.
Oh, now look who's covering for Bob and Mary.
Right, well, you know.
I got it. The next one is like, I agree.
Yeah, we got it.
That's for everybody's mind. Everybody in favor, please say the same. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Bobby. Next thing is consideration of the Berry School underground storage tank that's been there for a long time, emptied. And Eric, you can go over that, please.
Yes, so this is the last underground storage tank in the town. Slowly for a period of years getting rid of that. And it was a big documentation process that's been done by Connecticut Department of Environmental Justice. So, a big part of doing that the right way, getting all the paperwork. Well, in fact, they came back, just as a side story, they randomly walked into our office last year and they're like, we want to check the paperwork on these old tanks that you have removed. So it's good to everything was in place.
All the closeout documents. Good. Great.
So for this, let's see. So basically, total request is 48,000. Just added a little bit to the 12, which you'll see if you look at the attached quote from the contractor is about 46. I think that this is going to go well. I had some optimistic. I don't think we're able to do, but it's a little bit in there. This is a contractor that I wasn't here, but back a few years back when they did the high school tank removal, there was an issue with that contractor. When we did the middle school, however, we had everything was on time and there was no extras, and that was this contractor. That's why we got these guys. And they also do our testing. When we had soil tests, which we had, that was an issue last year with the controls. Right, so that's why we're using that contractor. That's the amount. It's a 10,000 gallon fuel oil tank. We currently pay 2,000 a year just in insurance. Brad, I heard that from SEBI, so we'll get rid of that. So we have to close
Is that like an insurance because we have oil tank in the ground? Is that
Yeah.
what that was?
That's.
We carry additional insurance on all our underground. Well, if there's on one left,
So it's another cut in next year's budget.
it only costs us 48 grand.
Right. Right. So the Amazon thing.
Heck, I thought you said you'd yank it out for 25.
This is a fiberglass tank and there's concrete work also. If you can go into maybe that,
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody cares like Cynthia, but.
So it's a fiberglass tank. It's your question about the pressure test. They actually do a tightness test. Backyard. We're gonna remove the tank, so, here's the thing, so there's a lot of questions about the slab there. If you're familiar with the location, there's a little hill, and, on the top side of the hill, there's a loading dock that's adjacent to the building. And then on the other side, there's like some stairs, so this tank is kind of this slab is like a rectangular, more or less shaped slab with steps on it. So I got an answer on terms of that. There was a question about whether that whole slab would be removed. The answer is no. So the slab is about 25 by 45 feet, more or less. The width of the slab is 25 feet, but the width of the tank is only about 9.5 feet. The length of the slab is 45 feet. Like the tank is only about 18.5. So there could be saw cutting out basically the outline of the tank, moving that. Not exactly sure. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of side, carrying all that out. Refilling that, compacting that fill, and then as far as the concrete patch, it's just going to be that area. So there's no need to refill the slab and the sidewalk. That slab is basically stay. Except for the patch.
Where is it, Eric? Sorry, that's the part.
It's like, some,
By the loading dock, I could have put a gym there. Yeah.
Yeah, so is it just over, it's by the, like, the field there, right then? Like facing the high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the ball field.
Against the building.
Will there be need to do a test whether remediation needs to be done?
yes, they take samples of everything, samples of soil, it's everything. Sit down. They've already pumped out the tank, the tightness test that I mentioned, so that.
They
confirmed that
when they replaced this tank, they put like a small swimming pool in concrete underneath it for any leaks, it would catch it. So if there's anything, it's gonna be concrete, you know what I mean? So it's,
But what about leaks that, hopefully this is the case, right? But what about if leaks have already happened, they test to see if there's soil?
Oh, because they kept it up to date and they did the tightness test and it passed that.
Pressure test.
That's the. That doesn't.
That's the indicator of tightness test. If it fails tightness test, then we know we have an issue someplace in that tank, penetration of the tank.
but in their quote, they're obviously gonna test the soil before they backfill and run out of there.
Yeah, they have to have documentation of all that, because that goes into the permanent record that we can use for all time. Yeah, like I said, they came one day randomly, like, maybe they were check out the papers for these things. I wasn't here when it was out by the night. There. But we have all that, that's all fine.
So there's a possibility, though, you think it's a probability that there could be a need for remediation to come back to say there's more money needed. Right? You think that's a.
Cause there's a containment underneath it, it's gonna be in that, you know what I mean? So it's not gonna be able to go down.
In the soil.
So the tank would have to fail and the concrete.
Right, both would have to fail.
So the concrete.
There's two concrete, there's concrete flat work, they call it, like a sidewalk on top of it, that they're using their hand carts and loading dock. But then underneath the tank, there's literally a trough, of
shallow
concrete,
trough,
almost like a
like-
small,
Yeah.
and if it happened to leak, it would be just confined in that.
Are they taking out the concrete like basin too, or are they just gonna?
No.
They're gonna leave this.
I have two questions if it's permitted here. One, it looks like the quote's based on the work being done 8.5 through 8.6. Is that still the timeline? Because
Yes.
obviously we get, they're not gonna want to do it. Port Med's not gonna want it done during the school year, so obviously.
I think they're scheduled for August, I believe.
Yeah, August 5th and 6th. And it, just wanted to point out, it does say that it's on the state contract. So,
You know, is there anything we can do? I mean, I don't know how nice the concrete is back there, but to saw cut a small spot and then pour it in, it's just not, I mean, that's.
The
That's the right
problem
way.
is, it's 45 feet long and you're only cutting up 18 and a half. You don't want to spend all that money to go 45 feet again.
Is that slab in good shape back there?
Yeah, it looks like it's not small or anything, as far as I can see it. It's an expensive slab to go to remove the thing and something else there. Because that's,
Yeah, I get it. It's just not the right way to do it. You're spending 48,000, we're gonna have an awesome job. You know what I mean? I get the tank's gonna be gone, but we don't spend money to recreate. I get it. I want it.
And August sixth, Nick can be out there with his handprints.
Yes, yes. You put my name too. I hear that every time.
Around this Chinese theater, sidewalk is done.
Okay, I think it's one of these things that has to be done eventually, and we're so flush with money, so we might as well just do it.
Throw salt over your shoulder.
So let's take a motion, we approve 48,000 out of the CNR account to fund removing of the underground storage tank at the Berry School property.
I'll second. Oh, no.
I'll take a motion.
We have a second. Any other discussion on the berry tank? All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Please, good. Okay. All right, thank you both for coming in. And we're all good. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Eric.
Are you gonna put the CNR? You hang out for that?
No,
Is it-
the CNR list was because they were approving CNR stuff, so they see the balance of CNR.
Oh. And they gave Eric copies.
We're gonna talk about our fund balance, so that's.
Yeah.
If you want to figure out. our fund
Dumbbells.
balance.
Dumbbells.
Thank you for what you guys do.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, as everybody remembers, what do you call it? Brad had made a note in his iPhone or iWatch or whatever he does, that we should, at least review the fund balance policy on a yearly basis. So, he wasn't here last meeting, so we moved it to this meeting. So Brad,
So, July 12th, 2022, the Board of Finance voted to update the fund balance policy. We thought it was because it sat for like 8-9 years since we had done it, that probably as a best practices would be create from the board every year, even if it's yep, still good, but at least once a year we're looking at it. And it's something that we can tell, hopefully we don't have to do a rating call anytime soon, but that the rating agencies, like, here's our minutes from every year where the Board of Finance reviewed it. So my recommendation would be that we set it 2 years ago at 18. We could have arguments all day if 18 is the right number, should be higher, should be lower. That's kind of what we decided. I don't really see a point in changing it right now, especially since we have a couple of big capital needs that might be pushing us close to that 18. But we should, even if we bought the property across the street and with the HVAC project and the ladder truck, I don't see us going below it without and having to borrow. So I think right now 18 is a good number still. So
I would agree also. I know we had a discussion, when we did it a couple of years ago. I'm sorry, maybe two of us, yeah. And I thought we were talking between 20 and 18. And I think, Bob, you had some thoughts maybe a little lower also. Was that?
I think it's the Brad's point.
Yeah, fluctuate.
and if we had to dip below the 18 and we had good reason to, I don't think we get knocked by that by the rating agencies.
No, you said as long as it's
Yeah, that's right.
for improvements to the town or
Well,
whatever.
Oh,
Really, you shouldn't dip below the 18 just for like
Just
an asset versus asset necessarily. They we go like, well, you have a policy, but if there's an emergency,
right.
and it would be silly to go out and borrow money for an emergency when you had cash.
Well, also because it's kind of fluid. I mean, if you just dip down temporarily, it's not like
Yeah.
you're there
But-
permanently.
But the fact that we would dip below our policy, would that hurt our credit rating or bond?
You'd honestly, you'd have to dip below it on like a June 30th cutoff.
Or it
If we
stayed below it
dip
for a long
below-
time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so you mean it would hurt us if we didn't correct it before that fiscal year was over?
Yeah, because they're really gonna they'll probably look mid-cycle and ask how much cash you have, but the number is so fluid because we collected like money, a lot of money comes in July, so technically we have a really high fund balance, but we don't report. We report on the June 30th time. So that's,
Closing the year.
they look at the audited number. If they went through our minutes and saw that the Board of Finance had approved a ton of like fund balance purchases after the audit was done, they would go, what are you guys doing? You know, like, we know you don't have that much money anymore, because they look at all that stuff. The auditors look at it and the rating agencies would look at it, and they would ask us about it. But yeah, like if we went to 17.9 in January and then it went back up, it really, like, we probably wouldn't, we know we were close and we'd be monitoring it.
We would just know it,
Yeah.
basically, right?
When we were discussing creating the policy and coming up with a number, my take from all of the comments from Nick and Bob and yourself, Brad, that it was very important. I find it really interesting that I talked to different Board of Finance members of different towns, and I'm like, okay, what's your policies there? And they always say, well, we don't have one.
Yeah.
And I just find that very interesting, like a Newtown or a Reading or even a Brookfield, that either their members aren't keyed in on what's happening or their board doesn't think it's important to have a policy.
We didn't have one.
We didn't have one
We're supposed to
until,
have one.
I've been here 13 years now. It was, the first one was created while I was here. So we didn't have one. And the reason we created one is our financial advisor said you should have one of these things. Because the rating
Make the money a tool to use, because if we just use it without a policy,
No, they didn't want to see a
the
policy.
charter dictates how you can use the fund balance. So your policy doesn't, it's a
Or how much
policy,
of
it
it,
doesn't
say.
dictate it really. It's, here's what we plan to do with it. The policy is your backbone when you go to the rating agencies goes, here's what we do.
And look
You know,
what
and
we-
then they look to make sure that's what you actually do and it's not just something you do on paper.
Do they require that you have them? Because what
They
he's
don't-
saying is,
They don't require it, but it's a best practice.
okay,
So it's best practice to have it, but it doesn't mean anything unless you don't follow it. But if you have it and you follow it,
it's
like
better for
bonus
your
points.
rating
Yeah.
because of that.
They're happy to see it.
Bethel's a town that 13 years ago, we would have never thought was AAA. One of the reasons we're AAA is they like what we've done management wise between First Selectman, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance for the last 13, 15 years. They like that we have a big fund balance. A town like a Wilton, a Ridgefield, Darien, they do not need 18% fund balance to be AAA.
Yeah.
Those towns have enough wealth in them, and the rating agencies would tell you, like, well, maybe they wouldn't tell you, but they know that if Darien needed $5 million and they send out a supplemental tax bill, they're getting their $5 million. You know, Bethel would too, but it would be a lot harder in Bethel and a much more of a hardship for residents of Bethel to go out and have to collect $5 million extra that we weren't banking on than it would be for the population there.
So here, so I want a history lesson, Bob, this is to you. So with all of the money that we have spent as a town in the last 10 or 15 years with the high school and stuff like that, how did we maintain that balance fund and not just go right to that bank and spend it? Why didn't we? I mean,
We were disciplined. I think we.
but you went short-term, you bonded things instead of, how did you convince them to?
Well, I don't know how much history you want or is relevant. Brad will stop me from going off. The town did borrow on a short-term basis. Well, I used to call it a credit card. And that was not helpful, right? That gave us an obligation on the balance sheet that came due every year. We had to refund it. When did we get 2015?
yeah,
We thought that that was a practice we should stop and that we knew we had school renovations coming. We knew we had police station renovations coming and that those were going to be large borrowings. 40 billion for the school and then
yeah,
15
45.
million for the police station. So in advance, John, what we started doing is we knew the rating agencies were going to start looking at this kind of stuff. And we realized that if we were going to borrow, let's just call it $55 billion, the savings from having a fund balance policy at a certain level was going to be fairly significant, right? Because they'll give us the AAA rating as opposed to a lower rating.
So you get a good interest.
And I forget, we did all the interest rate corrections, but it was big numbers, $3-4 million more in interest expense if we didn't have things like this that showed us as being disciplined town financially.
And just back up a little bit further, because I ran the historical data, which I know when you joined, I think we had a meeting, I think Matt was still here. And we talked about like the historical financial data. In 2008, the fund balance was 8.7.
Wow.
So 2011, it was 11, 2012, it was 14, then 16, 18, 22, and 2015. So some of that was before some of that happened, the fund balance had jumped up greatly. Revenue collections were good. Our former comptroller and a lot of foresight was very conservative with his revenue estimates, and we had good years. I think and in fairness, coming out of 7-8, 9, non-healthy economy. So I don't have before then. So our fund balance could have dipped a little bit in that time too. So it might have been higher before then. But the fund balance jumped greatly between 08 and 2014. It jumped 10 points, which was huge to set us up to be able to do some of that stuff. Some of how we got there is I think when you two joined the board, we had $10.5 million in short-term debt because interest rates were, we had one short-term loan that was 11 basis points.
I don't know, John, if that responds.
It absolutely
I think what we were lucky, I don't want to say lucky, dumb, stupid. We were fortunate. We kind of knew what we were doing. We looked out into the future and we said, we have these huge projects going down the line. We're going to have lots of borrowing. And we knew we had to make sure the rating agencies were going to think well of us. And so we had a couple of years to put all that in progress while we had to get rid of the short-term debt. And we were able to get well positioned for when the rating agencies did come in to underwrite us. They said, wow, Bethel's got his act together. And to Brad's point, his comment earlier, let's hope we don't have to do any more rating agency reviews because that means we have to borrow big dollars. There'll be something coming up.
Yeah.
But I think we're really well positioned now to have the rating agencies come in and say, you all have done a really good job over a long period of time, and you've earned your AAA rating.
Let me reward you.
Yeah.
So, and it has been, so we got AAA in 2017. I think we've had 2 or 3 rating reviews since, and it's been confirmed or reaffirmed. whatever they say. And I said, I don't want to do one anytime soon because I don't want to have borrowing. We might do one in the coming year because there's some refinancing savings that we could have on some of our existing debt.
As interest rates go up.
I was gonna say, even with the higher interest rate.
Even with the higher interest rates because
No refund.
like we might, yeah. But I've kind of not, I talked to the FA and he wants us to do it. Because it's $1 million savings over 15 years. But then I would talk to them and it'd be $500,000, then it'd be 1.2. And I just didn't want to spend $100,000 on a rating with that much volatility. So Dan and I are watching it, and I don't think we'd do anything without at least talking to the board or at least talking to the chairman if it was something we decided in a shorter term. But that is a possibility that we're looking at, is we might be able to save some money. And what we would do is probably the same thing, because what they do is they give you like a 5% interest rate out there, but they pay you a premium up front. So your true interest cost is lower. So our true interest cost out there now is like 5% because we got premiums. The last bond we did, we said, we don't want the money up front. So we went out for like 18 million. We got a $2.2 million premium. And we just pretty much took that premium and paid down the payment to the principal right away. So we only really borrowed 15.8 the last, or I don't, I'm going off memory, so those numbers might be less, but so we've been really conservative and smart about what we've done over the last 15 years, but we've really focused on our borrowing and our short term since 2015, especially.
Oh, in the last, John, too much, get John, this is too little.
No, it's perfect.
I think what the rating agency look at this as is you, Bethel, have an 18% savings account on the side. So if something catastrophic happens, you can pay for it.
Mhm.
And you don't have to go out to your citizens with supplemental bills asking for more money. To Brad's point, That's easier done in more wealthy down county towns than it would be here. So I think they see this as being our ultimate insurance policy. We're self-insured. So we took this money from the taxpayers, but that, in the future, something real catastrophic, this will pay for it. That's why I believe having this fund balance was, it's good policy.
Absolutely.
Great. So I think we're all in agreement that there's no change.
So the changes can show that we should leave it at the 18%.
And we addressed
And I
it.
don't think you need to vote on it or anything.
Not at all. It's just,
No, it's
there's
just
no
what it
change.
is.
We
Yeah.
discussed it and
Notes on it. And it's fine.
Thank you, guys.
good work. Again, Bob and Cynthia, thank you. Last thing on our agenda is a controller's report.
I know you're all gonna tell me the comptroller report was so much better last month. I get it,
It seemed
We're
so.
gonna make it to-
Was it the presentation?
I know.
On the call. I hope she's on the call.
She's on
Yeah,
there.
she's on. Hey, Seth.
Can we tell you what a great job you did?
Mary, make sure she's good. So we'll start with revenue. Revenue right now, as of June 30th, this number will change slightly because we'll have some old year money come in. But it's not going to change drastically. $4.5 million more than what we budgeted for. 2.8 of that is just strictly related to interest we collected. I think it's going to be almost right at, we have another 23,000 that we booked today, which would bring us to 1,989,000. So like $10,000 short in interest of $2 million for the year. Property leases, that's minor. Change in future value was some of, we had monies in, they're not CDs, but we call them like CDs. So the future value jumps around on them. We don't have any of those anymore because I didn't like the volatility of the reporting of it because it would look like our money would go down, but it really wouldn't. But that's just the last of those coming due. They were all short term. They're not CDs, but I'm going to keep calling them CDs for lack of a better term on them. And then we had the 2 sales of the properties that went through $1.2 million. Those are the 2 that we've been paid on. One more is agreed upon, but they have a contingency in there that they have to get planning and zoning approval before it actually closes. They have a year to do that. They haven't sent anything to P&Z yet. My understanding is they still want it. They're held up in the engineering work before it even goes to P&Z. Intergovernmental revenues, we got $1 million from the state that we didn't count on, which was the motor vehicle tax. And the other piece was municipal revenue sharing account, which every year the state says, oh yeah, there's this thing that exists. We're going to give you money, and never did. But this year they gave us $500,000. So that's that $1 million. Tax revenue was over by 355,000, which was one of the lowest years we've probably had because that's usually higher. But the collection rate for the current year is 99.16. The prior year was 102. It all has to do with how much prior year stuff they collect. Obviously, you can't collect more than 100%, but if you collect prior year stuff, you're going to get there. Any questions on revenue? Oh, the other thing, Park and Rec hit their number, even the adjusted number. Conveyance and recording fees. I know this bothers Lisa because she handles these. There's nothing she does that generates these. There wasn't as much conveyance and recording fees this year. So those are both under budget. Building and zoning though, brought in almost 620,000 versus a budget of 350.
Wow.
And the only other thing that we didn't get at all was the Kerma revenue sharing. And this year they changed the way they do the LoSiP program. It used to be the money would accumulate and then you'd have to submit a project and draw down on it. For this year, they decided to change it and they're just going to send us the money. So our budgeted number was 126 because we always budget for it like we were going to draw on it. And they sent us $194,000.
What's it do with scrap metal?
Scrap metal. Great year for scrap metal. I don't know. but not as great for dumping charges though. Okay, so,
We paid for it in fuel, trust me.
yeah. So any questions on revenue? Like I said, the expenditures will change a lot more because there's outstanding bills coming in. Revenue will change a little bit, but not drastically.
How did building and zoning overshoot their revenue projections by double?
You know what some of that is? It's me. I don't like, so they've been doing, I'll pull it up. They've been doing a number close to that, but we used to budget 350. And at some point, when during COVID and all the buildings spiked, I think we increased it slightly, but we thought at some point it was gonna all dry up. It hasn't dried up.
Right.
So that's just me being conservative with thinking that at some point, I didn't want to make a hole for us and then have to like if we jumped up to say it was 500 last year, then we'd have an issue.
The reason I ask is you always think of like the building department to be a user fee, right? So if I'm building a house, I should pay the fees because we got to make sure we have inspections, right?
Yeah.
And I always, even in planning and zoning, when we would look at the fund, the policy on what we would charge for applications,
Yeah.
you always want it to be right? You don't want it to cost me money if Nick's doing a project. We want to make sure it's charged just right. And this just jumps off the page and says, are we overcharging fees for contractors or applicants in business and Bethel?
So when Chris Baldwin became a building inspector 5-6 years ago, he switched it to the national average for what construction costs are. He actually technically can go with a Connecticut average, which is higher, and I think he has the ability to go with like Fairfield County, which would be higher. So some of that he adjusted because we were behind, but he hasn't been aggressive with adjusting our building values. Or the construction values, I guess. Some of it is like there's the big project on Steiner, which I'm sure they paid a ton of money in permit fees. There's a couple other big projects in town that.
No, I know, but we want the fees to offset the expense, right? So if we have 3 building inspectors, we want to make sure we get enough to offset their salaries to be even, right? So it doesn't cost the other taxpayers money, but it seems like we're really starting to make money on that.
I've heard we talked about this before. It's really just the fact that we lowballed the budget for what it was. If you look at what we're actually spending and look at what it runs to run a building department,
Okay, do you think it's
Let's look at
more
that.
like 600, not 350?
yeah, probably, because I think these numbers were just picked, kind of round numbers.
I thought 350 was, because that's what it costs us to run that department.
No,
No.
it is close. What they spent in 24 is like $360,000 in expenses.
Okay,
So it happens to be close, but it's based on the fees based on the construction costs, I think, of the national.
Yeah.
So I think he's trying to be fair and be,
It's not out of line, the fees is still not, but. Well, what I mean is, should we be charging that much if we're offsetting, we're doubling what the expense to run the department is?
it's so hard, they've been swamped. Because they've been swamped, they're bringing in a lot more money. I think,
Oh, you mean, so if it cut off, we still need to
Yeah.
make sure we generate some revenue.
so the budget for 25, we did bump it up to 400,000. The last 3 years actuals are 476, 566, and 620. And these are like years after I'm gonna look at before that. The 2020 was 553 and 526. The year before that was 350. So like we were in that 350 range
Can't
for
fall in
like
a
straight
hole.
years.
Yeah.
And it hasn't slowed down. I don't know if it's just people are building.
No, I think my question is not fair, because when building slows down, we still need to maintain some kind of number to pay for that department.
Correct. So just in your brain, give them credit if building does slow down, so don't hammer them later on about their budget being more than what they
That's
bring in.
probably not gonna happen, but I'll take that.
It's recorded, right?
Yeah.
But underneath that, there's pistol at 5,000, then 7840. Well, what's the number underneath that?
Well, that's the question. I don't know why the thing didn't show it. That's been like that for months, Phil, as a test for you guys to see if you look at that.
You know, I'm surprised you're the guy to get.
You know, I do bees. I might not ask a lot of questions, but you really.
No, they're quality questions.
I'm going to them now, so you can. I don't know if it's just in print or I forgot to leave it. Stosh. Dog license.
Dog license.
So it shows up on my sheet for some reason, it didn't print.
The next one, you go, I know you go to the back of Pine Glass, make sure Chris out till.
Next month's gonna be a different one to see, you know.
Okay.
During the Burke administration, there was a big push for, my dog, for the record, never had a license on him. But there was a big push to get the dogs all licensed. And Lisa did a great job and she had a whole bunch of stuff. The very next year, Bob Hurk said that 2,000 dogs died. You know, because
Yeah, right.
there was no more
No more
dogs.
dogs.
But I don't know the answer.
That's
but
the
I think
difference
2,000 dogs.
between dog, dog licenses and canine receipts. What's the difference?
Is it canine?
Like if your dog bites somebody, I don't know, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a police, it's under, it's in with the police stuff, so.
I'm sure it's canine, what, don't we buy the frosty cups for the canine dogs?
Oh, yeah, the,
It's a
the donuts.
revenue item, so.
The frosty cup, yeah.
We charge for it.
So there's, I don't think we do. We charge when we like adopt one, but we didn't adopt it in the last couple of years.
Just saying, that's $1,000.
But that, most of that money goes to the state. We get like $10 or $8 for every dog we adopt. All the work that the ACO has to do for it, for the state to take 90% of it.
Right. Good job.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Brent?
On revenue, no, on expenditures, yes.
You see your account's way over.
I know. So my account's over, we haven't, charged the auditing fee off the water and sewer yet. So some of these are high that won't end up high, like town insurance, we haven't charged off yet. Utilities is over, we know that's gonna be over. The estimate on that's been 250 to 300. You have to look through all the salary lines like I did the other day. The salary line as a whole is to the good over $250,000. Some of that, we had some vacancies, a number of vacancies that weren't filled. The police department looks like it's over, but, well, it is over, but their salaries are over, but a lot of that's in the wage adjustment account. So some of these accounts that are over, like selectmen, it's because the salary adjustments in the wage adjustment.
Because you just haven't cleaned it up yet, basically.
Well, we don't do that move. It just sits in the wage adjustment. When you do the transfers in October and November, we'll break some of that down. The other one that was to the good, employee benefits, the health insurance. We had a good year with health insurance. That's why that's to the good. 188,000 right now. Park and Rec will be under budget this year, not the whole 75 that's still out there because they still have some outstanding invoices. But obviously the board did the adjustment on it. But with the adjustment, they're coming in under budget.
They're plugging the hole in the bucket, basically.
Yeah.
And now that we're June 30th, we feel like that really landed the right way. Because I always felt like we had a dart and we were trying to catch their number.
So
Now we caught it.
we caught it, yeah.
And now to go back to the revenue number, how much more over the revenue was it?
Their revenue?
Yeah.
Right now it's 16,000, but I know more money came up to pay us for the old year.
So it wasn't a ton.
Yeah, it
Not
was 240.
We
They
did,
came in-
remember, we adjusted it by
Yeah.
190,000,
Big adjustment.
so.
Now to go back to revenue.
Yeah. So in a month, I'll have a better handle of where we're gonna end for June 30th, and in 2 months, we'll have a really good handle of when we start getting the last of the bills. But I think of how bad 2023 was and how much hair I would have lost if I had hair.
I mean, you definitely do look better this year.
Right.
I mean, I know you lost some weight. I got that part too.
But like, we're in a really healthy spot right now. So, but we did a lot of work. We've had a lot of meetings. We put in some practices that should have been there for the last 20 years that didn't exist, and things were running good, so we didn't have them. But shame on us for not doing it anyway. So
Long as done.
So that's where we're at.
Someone like to make a motion for Brad's,
Are we gonna talk about the capital, is that gonna be?
Item.
that was,
No, no, it's not gonna happen together.
I like to give you a CNR update whenever the board finance has CNR is up to approve.
I make a motion that Rex Burns, that's, Brad.
yeah, we're making a
I
motion.
believe he's left something out before.
Oh, it's not that important.
Special day for.
Oh, well, that's what today, I talked to him today, I didn't hear.
Yes, it is.
Thirty's a big one.
My birthday.
I mean, was there cupcakes here, Mary?
No.
No, we do.
Yes.
Kept it a secret.
We need to work on that.
You don't need that. No. I'm in the book.
And where's it from?
In my life now.
It's in the context you know.
To that point, when we talk about last year, and this is just, like, I was thinking about this earlier today. Like, I'm not complaining, it's my job. I was miserable last year, my birthday. But it stands out in my head. It's because of the stress about the budget. And we ended up $40,000 to the good. But July 9th of last year, we were not $40,000 to the
No,
good on this budget. So
Over 9 and all.
That was a dark day.
it was a dark.
I'm
2
glad we
months.
redeemed it this year. It's better for you.
But it's, like I said,
Mary, could you make sure you put a star next to Brad's name?
no stars.
I was second John Lennon's motion, except Bradford.
On his birthday?
I like moving it along.
I'd like to know if cupcakes, Mary.
Yeah. All right, all in motion on the, I'm sorry, favor of motion? I say it aye. Aye. I know Dan has stepped in, before we adjourn, I was looking at things and Dan and I talked about this a little bit, that the firemen, they get a tax abatement, or is that what they call it, a tax abatement? And I was pretty surprised how small it is, and I hope the first selectmen work on that. Because I think the volunteer department's getting a heck of a value to this town. And if we can nurse this thing along for another 5 or 10 years, I think it's well worth it. So
And do you know the number off the top of your head currently? What
it's ridiculous. It's like $1,000. Yeah, and if you're a husband and wife, they cut it down. Why would you?
Part of it too is we have a lot of folks who come from out of town. And we don't have any agreements with neighbor or anybody else to do something. So I think we need to look at that as well.
So it's $1,000 or, well, if you pay more than $1,000 in taxes,
Right.
you get $1,000. If the only thing registered to your name is an automobile and you have a $400 tax book for your car, you're capped at what you pay. So because it's in
And I understand, a smart guy had told me right when I got on this board, when you take $1 off of someone else's back, that means you put it on someone else's back.
That's right.
And that was you, Ralph.
I told you that too.
But I think it's for a good
Yeah.
cause and, again, the hours that they put in, we need to give them a little more, anything we can possibly do, because I think the savings to this town is incredible.
I just throw one thing out there, just that an early thought. They used to get a longevity program and it was stopped primarily because it wasn't being used wisely and it wasn't being followed correctly. It's almost one of these things where the pencil within it, people get credit for longevity. There are programs out there now that really almost like a thumb scan sort of thing where you sign in at a call, a lot easier for the town to watch over something like that. So maybe someday we look at that because, I've looked at the numbers, what it would cost us to have a department, like look at Richfield. I mean, it's crazy, crazy. So to your point, making those investments are something we should consider next year.
Yeah.
If there's opportunities, and I'll certainly bring something to the board that's reasonable.
Yeah, and numbers so the program still exists, it just closed the new members and has been probably for like 8 years. Something like that. It's a low-step program like the service support program. And I think you get $200 or $300 a month max after, I think, like 25 years or something like that.
And I think, there needs to be a rule book. If the chiefs need to, whoever needs to take care of it, and as long as they're following the policies, then I would be in favor of whatever we can do. Without any funny business, so. Definitely. Okay. All right, I would accept a motion. Move to adjourn. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.